Hello, and welcome to the Leverage Podcast. I'm Paul Richard, your host, and we have Koleman Parsley today with us. Coleman, welcome to the podcast.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Love it, love it, love it. It's a great day to talk about marketing and talk about your background. So tell us a little bit about Coleman. What's your background, and how did you get into this business that you're in now?
Yeah, so I went to school for computer science, and doing that, I was doing some side work on a service like Upwork, just building some websites. And then one of my friends happened to be walking by, saw I was building a website. He ended up hiring me in his business. And so I left the computer science. I still got my degree, but I left the desire to be a software engineer and started building websites full time. And that was about 9 years ago. And about 2 years ago, went out completely on my own. And now I run a website agency where we provide holistic digital solutions for everyone.
Awesome, awesome. Did you already have a interest in computers growing up when you were younger? Was that always, were you a gadget guy, or what started your interest to get into the IT area?
Great question. I mean, I grew up, I loved taking things apart, studying like electronic components, things like that. And then I, of course, played a lot of video games, which made me more tech savvy. And then I wanted to learn how to develop the video game. So I had a little stint when I was probably 13 or 14 where I developed a few games. I was like, oh, this is actually really fun to create something, be able to share it, and never look back.
Awesome, awesome. Well, that's very interesting. And all right, so the website development area, it's a
Mhm.
evolving thing, isn't it? I mean, what's the latest trends in website development? I mean, as far as you're doing the marketing side, right? Is that correct?
Yeah,
Like trying to get the
so
marketing?
with website development, it's a very interesting world, especially with AI. It's easier than ever right now to go and create a website for almost free. The
Yes.
problem is the actual structural foundation. And so I tell people when you're building a house, it's very easy to build a very quick, very cheap house made out of paper and straw. It looks good until, you try to scale your business or you try to add content, then everything breaks. AI is a great tool to use, and we do use it at our agency. But the problem is it can't build the scalable platform that most people want it to in a day. Um, it's a great tool if you want to throw together a quick website while you develop your actual full-time, full scalable site. Um, so that's really changed the landscape of things. A lot of content has changed. There was a time between 2018 and 2022 where the more content you had on your site, the better. People or Google especially just love to see words. You could write 100 or 1,000 words to say something that you could say in 10 words. And Google loved that. They wanted content, they wanted information. Now with AI and the content generation that happens there, it's completely flipped on its head. So Google wants short and sweet. They want listed out bullet points. They want very straightforward information instead of just having a bunch of fluff on your site.
Got it. Got it. So like just a list of keywords and stuff like that. It's not looking for that anymore. It's actually
Correct.
looking for now how maybe how do they know the difference between content that is good or more searchable or whatever they're looking for versus the previous? How does that work?
It's a great question. They look at quite a few different factors on your website. One of the primary factors that I've seen for the algorithm, and to be completely honest, Google does not announce their algorithm. You just have to keep tweaking it until you find out what they like. Uh, so what Google has really liked recently is backlinks. And so backlinks refer to another website referring your website. And that can look like a local directory, like a Chamber of Commerce. That can look like a Trustpilot review or a G2 or a Yelp, all pointing people to your website. And so what you're doing there is you are convincing Google that you are an authority on the topic. And you can convince them you're the authority on the topic by having other people point to you as the authority. A very big aspect of that is co-writing blogs and articles on other people's website and having yours linked through there. That's another way to show authority. But as far as scraping, so when a search console looks at your site, it's called scraping. And what they're doing is they're looking at all the content, all the code, all the HTML, and reading it to determine what your site is about and who it's for. So there's a few different ways you can tell a crawler, which is what goes to different websites and scrapes. There's a lot of keywords, is by giving it a schema, which is just a simple breakdown of, hey, this is what this page is about. Very, very simple key terms. This is who it's for. This is the price of this product. So Google search or Google will look at the schema, read that, and then look at your site, see if it matches. Cross-reference the two of those, cross-reference between 1,000 other different things to determine, is this accurate information? There's a lot of variables to that. One of the ways you can show authority is not saying things like and fluff, things of that nature. Of course, I'm saying right now, but things of that nature tell Google that you don't exactly know what you're talking about. But it is a dangerous game because you can't be on your website and declaring a bunch of things that aren't entirely true, because then you're going to have issues there as well. But the way you write and the authority in which you write is one of the many, many ways Google, and I use Google as a catch-all for search engines. It's the way Google verifies that you are the authority on that topic.
Okay, great. So there's a lot of people that have website development services of different, levels of expertise, etc. So how, if you've got somebody out there that's listening to the podcast, looking at the podcast, and they say, I hired a guy. I don't know if the website's, good or not. I don't know if it's, it doesn't seem to be performing any differently than what I originally had planned. It's not doing much. It's kind of a landing page. What are some tips and tricks for people to, can they self-discover a little bit whether their website needs improvement and et cetera? What would you recommend if they're in that situation? They're like, I don't know what to do. I'm not the expert. I don't know how this works. What questions do I ask? Can you give a little insight into that?
Absolutely. The best way I have found for anyone, no matter how tech savvy you are, to see how well your website is doing is to Google search your industry. And if you are a local service-based business, you can look up your city, your industry. So Springfield, Missouri, plumber. If you don't show up at all, your website's not working. If you show up, 10 links down, your website is working, but it could use improvement. There are dozens and maybe even hundreds of free tools, resources, classes, courses that you can use to learn how to do SEO work. There's an experience gap you get from watching these courses and actually running multiple websites that are ranking number 1, number 2, and number 3 on Google. But there is a lot of resources that would at least allow you to rank in the top 10. And if you're ranking in the top 10, you're at least being shown to people, because typically your Google search will show 10 results. You'll have 2 or 3 ads at the top, sometimes Google Maps, and then you'll have maybe 1 or 2 ads at the very bottom. Another way, if you want to get website traffic but you don't want to spend all that time, is you can just run ads. So you're always at the top, but then you're paying anywhere from 50 cents to, I've seen, up to $5 per click. That's not per client, that's per click of people to go to your website.
Okay, that's great advice. Now, all right, so if I'm just starting a business, I'm launching a business, and I want to get a website going, what would it cost roughly? I mean, price range to just get a site up and running so that I could begin to, get SEO going?
Great question. A big factor on this depends on your industry. There are certain industries that may never rank high for your website. From what I've seen, automotive industry, so like a mechanic, they typically, their website doesn't matter, because when you're looking for a mechanic, you're looking on Google Maps. So what you want is you want to focus all of your attention on your Google business profile, and of course your Apple Maps profile, which is I think called Apple Business Connect. They recently changed the name on that too. But that needs to be your focus. Your website should have content. You should have a website, but you don't necessarily need to spend $2,000 for an agency or a freelancer to develop that site. Whereas if you are a e-commerce business, all of your capital needs to go into building the website, because that is the only way for people to find you outside of course, UGC content on TikTok and Reels. So the price ranges quite a bit. I had a client a few weeks ago who's a massage therapist. She doesn't need a complex site. She needs to show up on Google, and she needs a way for people to contact and book an appointment with her. So that website was only a couple $100. We were able to knock it out. I went over, took some photos of her space, took some photos of where she's doing the massage and her waiting room, and of her doing things that we put on the site, got it up, got it running, and it's not ranking #1 for massage therapist, but it is allowing all of her friends to send the link to other people. And so she is generating business by referral through the website, which is great. I have another client that I'm working on right now, and it's going to be closer to a $6,000 or $7,000 website once we get the scope built out. And that's because we're building a site with, I want to say, 30 pages from the get-go, and the infrastructure to write blogs and post testimonials and to post case studies and all of these different pieces of content that are very easy to add once the infrastructure is built. It's kind of like a conveyor belt in a way of, if you have the infrastructure, it's really easy to add content to your site. Whereas the massage therapist will probably not touch the website for another 2 years, and then she'll go in and update the photos when she paints the walls or changes the paintings in her office, and then won't touch it for another 2 years. So there's different ranges, there's different tiers, and a lot of factors, and a website's not right for everybody.
It makes sense. Tell me a little bit about when you're doing a search. Like you mentioned a search earlier, if you were looking for a mechanic, right? And yes, the mapping is important, right? The next thing they're going to look at is probably the star rating, right, of them, and how many ratings they have. How is the interaction on that page, search page, between the star ratings, the mapping, maybe even some video content that they put out there? How does that all appear on the page, the search page? And how do they know which thing to focus on, if they're obviously limited on time?
Are you referring to the business owner managing their profile?
Yes.
Okay. Really, what needs to happen on your Google business profile is a lot of small interactions. So that means when you have, let's say you're a mechanic and you're working one day and in comes this incredibly nice Porsche that just looks beautiful, it's polished, it's waxed. You guys are doing oil change or some tire work on it. That is a perfect time to take a photo of your guys working on that car and post that photo to Google Business Profile. Uh, that's another, it takes 3 or 4 minutes. What Google looks at for the Google Business Profile is the amount of interactions you have, and it determines how active a business you are. So if you're constantly updating photos, I suggest at least once a week, ideally twice a week. If you're making posts, which you can actually, a lot of people don't realize you can make posts on your Google business profile. To be honest, I don't think anyone ever sees them, but Google does, and Google sees the activity.
Hmm.
Uh, I try to make a post every other day on my Google business profile that just highlights what I'm working on, what our agency is working towards, continuing education, things of that nature. And then also updating your hours every time there's a holiday. So for Memorial Day, you want to go in, log into Google Business Profile and mark, yes, I am open or I'm closed. And you want to do that for every holiday. And again, that's just another signal to Google that this is an active business. This business is wanting to tell people the hours they're open. This business is having customers. And outside of obviously sending people your Google Business Profile to leave a 5-star review,
Right.
you do want to have a continuing stream of reviews, and then responding to those reviews is another huge aspect. If you can, I would encourage people to leave a photo of their, when they leave a review, to take a photo and leave that photo so that it's just another signal to Google and Yelp and Apple Maps, and there's a few other. But Google Business Profile is one of the biggest for that.
Okay, great. I'll give you an example from my current experience because I'm trying to make a decision on a couple things. So, in my virtual assistant business, the company that I have a white label dealership with has just brought us lovable, developed landing pages. Okay,
Okay.
so it's got they're a national company. They've been on NBC, CBS, ABC, all this stuff, CNN. They've got rankings, they've got star ratings, they got all that stuff on the national level, right? Which reflects to me, right? Because that's the service provider that I am doing sales for. You mentioned earlier that, and that's Lovable is an AI development tool,
Hmm.
if our listeners don't know that. And so you mentioned earlier that in our discussion that the structure is probably not there in the backdrop to I don't know, expand. Maybe can you go a little bit deeper on that? What AI does and doesn't do at this point, and of course it's an evolving thing,
Hmm.
and maybe talk about that structure issue. What was that in particular?
Yeah, great question. The problem with predicting or saying anything about AI is in one week,
Yeah,
Anthropic or Claude or ChatGPT is going to release an update that makes this an obsolete conversation.
sure.
Uh, Really, AI is a fantastic tool, and it makes doing work in some ways a lot easier and a lot quicker, but it's not to this point, and this is April 2026.
Yes.
To this point, it is not a tool that you can just let go, run in the wild. There are some AI tools like OpenClaw that I've seen people develop some cool things with, but I've also seen some sketchy things going on with that. The One of the problems with AI is understanding what you see and what your vision is. And if you can't properly explain, this is what I'm wanting to do, this is where I'm wanting to go, it's not going to be able to build the foundation for that. Now, if you are using it as more of you're the project manager and you're giving it small snippets to do and to work on, that's a completely different story. It's the difference between a general contractor finding some people on the street, giving them the blueprints of the house and all of the materials and saying, hey, go build me a house, compared to finding some people, bringing them to the blueprints and say, hey, I need you to build this wall. Here are these pieces of wood. I want a window this high off the ground, this wide, and then guiding them through that process. There have been a few things I've seen in my own experience and from people who are in AI every day and all day, where in a way AI just gets lazy and stops looking at the blueprint. There's a very common, very well known item within content generation for AI that AI loves to use the M dash, which is the long hyphen. And the AI I use, I tell it every couple days, hey, do not use any emojis, do not use M dashes. I don't use those when I speak, when I'm having it generate some copy. And every other day it'll say, oh yeah, I stopped following that rule. Okay, I'll start following it again. Same thing with the style guide. I've given it style guides to generate a mock-up, and it's like, yeah, I didn't really look at it. It has a very false confidence. Sam Altman, actually, in an interview 2 weeks ago, was asked how ChatGPT specifically was unable to count. And the story was, there's a video that went viral where a guy was talking to ChatGPT, the audio version, and said, hey, I'm going to go for a run. I want you to time me to see how long it takes. And it responded, okay, go ahead and start. Timer has started. The guy waited, and it's on the video. The guy waited less than 3 seconds, and he said, all right, I'm done. How long was that? And ChatGPT said, that was a great time. That was 10 minutes and 20 something seconds. And the guy responds, well, I feel like it was a lot quicker. And the ChatGPT doubled down on that of like, oh yeah, sometimes it can feel that way. But no, it was a 10-minute and 20 something second run. And one of the problem that's going on there is AI doesn't really know its limitation. And maybe it thinks that it's actually timing something. Maybe it doesn't, and it's just trying to gaslight you. I don't know. But there's a lot of false confidence where people will give AI the tools and the materials and too much freedom to build something that they think looks well and looks good, but doesn't actually perform. And so there's a lot of really cool tools out there like Lovable, like Base 44, that are making some very nice web pages. The question I have is, what does the infrastructure look like underneath that? Are the studs 16 inches on center, or is there one on the corner and one on the other corner? And as soon as something changes on the website, the house falls over. I don't know. I've seen some wonderful AI websites built by Base 44 and Lovable, and I've seen some very questionable ones built by Base 44 and Lovable. I think as we progress in the Google and the search engine realm, people are going to start seeing a lot of issues with scaling their sites because, like I said earlier, the infrastructure is not there. And also, Google is currently working on patents and research and information to determine and how to figure out what content is AI generated.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. That's important because that's going to be ever changing as well. It's going to get
Mhm.
smarter and smarter and more precise, etc. So the clues will be smaller and smaller to find out, right? As it
Yes.
goes along. Right. Yeah. Very interesting. So it's an exciting area, exciting field to be involved in. So, uh, we talked before we came on to the podcast a little bit about, there's so many areas of specialty in this area of, using websites and generating sales. And I had interviewed somebody, and they were recently, and they had a little bit more in the SEO area and getting, to the top of the search results in that. And you mentioned something to me about the fact that you work a little bit more in the, I don't know if this is the correct term, you didn't use it, but nurturing the lead maybe, or, bringing it to a close. Can you talk a little bit about, because there's so many, I don't know if you call them niches or lanes that you can be in this. Talk a little bit about what you mentioned earlier in that realm, as far as, nurture may not be the right word. Correct me if I'm wrong there.
I think nurture is a valid word to use. There's a lot of very, like you said, very niche website areas that you can focus on. Uh, and a lot of it will generate more clients and more leads, more engagement. A lot of it will generate more sales. So there's not one particular niche that works best for you. There are some people whose websites have hundreds and hundreds of blogs, and they're getting hundreds of thousands of visitors to those blogs, and that would be considered a top of funnel resource. So it's catching a lot of people, and then you're funneling people down to your next item, to your next item, and then eventually to the sale. So there's a lot of different niches. SEO is a great way to reach more people. SEO is a fantastic way to get more and more people to come to your website or whatever the end goal is. However, there's a conversion rate issue there. The more niche you are with your client, with your product, with your service, the better, but also the smaller your pool is for potential clients and people. And so a lot of SEO services, what they do, and there's nothing wrong with this, is what they do is they'll find 100,000 people in which only 1,000 of them are actually potential clients. And it's a like throwing a large net into the ocean. You're hoping that you catch the client that you actually want. Whereas a lot of what we are doing at Deliver Digital is we're clarifying what the message is. And so instead of focusing on catching a large net, we're focusing on finding the right bait. I don't like to use the term bait, but
Understood.
the right
Understood.
bait to use to clarify your message of this is the particular person we're looking for. We're looking for, let's say we're a plumbing service. We're looking for someone that has a 5 bedroom house that has a market value of between 300 and 700,000. That's our niche market. We do this really, really well. High-end bathroom, plumbing, for example. Well, if you're writing articles that are just talking about plumbing, you're going to catch a lot of people, and only a few of which are going to have that style of house. Whereas what we're doing is we're going in and we're saying, hey, if you have this, let's say there's I don't know high-end toilet brands, but let's say there's one specific high-end toilet brand. We would write articles focusing on that high-end toilet brand for anyone who is looking for that, likely falls within the range of that $300,000 to $700,000 house that has 5 bathrooms.
Yeah.
Both
Yep.
are great ways to do it, and we do a lot of catch-all SEO work, but with scale comes a lot of fluff, and if you can drill down what you actually want, you end up with a higher conversion rate and less pain and worry about, all right, we have all these people, why are they not buying? Well, because they're not your actual clients.
Is the is there an average conversion rate for things like that where I know, for example, in the real estate industry, if you do pay per click and you do other things of that nature to bring in leads on the top of the funnel, you're probably going to have like a 3% conversion rate at
Mhm.
best. You know, maybe 1%. 1% would be considered pretty good, and 3%. So is that pretty much standard across all industries? If you just were to do, kind of like you say, I call it shotgun marketing, right? You're just blasting it out there and
Yeah.
seeing what you happen to hit, right? And I'm sure, like you say, it's probably specific, industry specific in some regards, because if you're looking for a nuclear reactor, that's going to be a little bit different than somebody that's
Mhm.
looking for a plumber, right? So I get that. I get that. Um, so is that, but in most, let's say most service industries like that, would that be a typical kind of conversion rate?
I would say yes. It, as long as you're in a vague niche. For example, there's a guy I follow online, and his niche is KitchenAid mixers. And so
Oh,
he does a lot of like TikToks, Facebook Reels about mixers and how to fix mixers and all KitchenAid mixers, uh, how to
huh.
do different things and update and all these different things. And it's all funneling people to his site where his business is fixing and reselling KitchenAid mixers. So I would
Hmm.
suspect that for someone to actually go to his site, he'll have a much higher conversion rate than
Yeah.
someone who is doing a shotgun type marketing. I think 3% for, let's say you have a blog, you write a blog about this topic. If you can get 3% or even 5% to convert to some sort of lead magnet, uh, which a conversion is just they're a person, I don't know who they are, and now I know who they are. It's someone reading my blog. Well, now I have their email. That's a conversion. So they're not paying yet. But if you can get a 5% conversion rate from your blog to your lead magnet, that's a fantastic conversion. And then you want that, I mean, you want all the numbers to increase, but you want the numbers to increase as you drill down the funnel. So if you have 100,000 people go to your blog and 5,000 fill out your lead magnet, well, you want between 20 and 30% to take the next step, which may be discovery call or low ticket product or some next item. You want you want to remove as much friction to maintain as many people coming down the funnel as you can. But I think a 3 to 5% is great for a very standard, not niche website.
Very good. Very good. Are you a Russell Brunson follower at all?
Of course.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Our virtual assistant company just hired the CMO from Russell's
Oh yeah.
company,
Okay.
ClickFunnels. Ben Harris is now with our company, and he's doing great. Just met with him in person in
Uh-huh.
Dallas about 2 weeks ago. So yeah, fantastic. Okay, so tell me about an on ramp with you. If somebody's like, I'm watching this podcast, I need some help, I think.
Hmm.
How do you engage with that person? Do you do an evaluation, kind of a
Yep.
situational analysis of what they have today? How does that work?
Yeah. We would do an onboarding call in which we would determine if this would be a good fit. What our agency is looking for is we're looking for someone who can make at least a 6 month commitment. And the reason for that is it typically takes over 2 or 3 months for you to see any sort of return on investment. We'll spend typically the first month or two just clarifying message, clarifying content, focusing on who your client is and how to find that client. And then the following, uh, forever, as long as you want to stay with us and as long as you're seeing that growth, then we're focusing on outreach. So if, again, not to keep bringing up the house analogy, but if your foundation is a mess and cracking and falling apart, you don't want to build a second story on your house until
Right.
you get that foundation repaired. Otherwise, you're going to take the small issue and you're going to make it much, much bigger. If you're focusing on content, but you have a gap in your lead magnet conversion where people are falling through the cracks, well, that's going to make that crack even bigger. And then you're going to have, instead of 10 people for every 1,000 who are potential customers that are falling through the crack, you now have 100 people, which, you know, no one wants to have.
Exactly.
So not everyone is a good fit. Um, we do a lot of smaller businesses who just need a very simple website, need something built now with the goal to eventually scale. And if that's, you, that's most of the time we're not going to turn that away. But if you actually want to scale your business through our growth plan, which is what I've been talking about, that is going to require a 6 month commitment. It's going to require you to actually have the time and desire to sit down to really, sit down with your board or your employees or maybe just your spouse and really focus on what you want. Because my vision is not going to be your vision for your business. And if we build something that you don't like, if we focus on a target or a niche client that is not
Yeah.
actually what you want your business to work on, that you're going to be resentful. We're going to be resentful. That's just a mess. So there is a pretty extensive onboarding process to make sure that this would be a good fit.
Excellent. You mentioned before we came on the podcast also about a success story that you
Mhm.
recently had, and it was a Facebook post I saw as well on your Facebook page. Tell us a little bit about that and the success you had with them.
Yeah. So this was a client we took on, I want to say 45 days ago, and they have a good website. They have a lot of traffic coming to the website. The individual who runs the company is very active online and in different spaces. So she gets a lot of people who know her by name and not by business. And their website had a lot of information. There was a lot of uh, jargon showing people, you know, in a weird way or in key terms, this is what we do, but they weren't saying, hey, this is what we do. And so what we did is we came in and we spent the past month just focusing on uh, what packages are you wanting to sell, and this they're in the medical space, and who is your client? Okay, so this is your client, so we're going to change the hero, which is the top part of your website, to focus on that client. We're going to list out the services you offer for that client. You will continue to do the other stuff that you do, but that's not what you want to do as your business because they were catering to the customers that were actually coming in, not the customers that their business is focused on. And so we just clarified that message, and we didn't add much content. We changed a lot of content. We changed the services and about. We updated some photos. We didn't really add pages or blogs or generate some backlinks or anything of that nature. And within 28 days, we raised the both the website visitors and the clicks for the next steps to actually book a call by 21%. And so
Very good.
this is before we even do outreach.
Wow, that's amazing. That's great. That's a great testimonial. I love that. Well, before we wrap up, is there anything that you'd like to share that I didn't ask you about, or anything you'd like to inform us about? Because there's so many things to talk about.
Yeah. I think a lot of people can do their own websites, uh, SEO and advertising and clarification. There's a lot of fantastic free courses, and this is, coming from someone who runs an agency where you're a potential client. There's some free resources through HubSpot. HubSpot has a lot of free courses. Neil Patel has a lot of free resources online. Russell Brunson has a lot of great things you can figure out about marketing. So I encourage anyone who is interested in hiring an agency or even bringing someone on full time into their business to give it a try, to look into it, to see. I had a friend of mine who wanted to hire me, and I encouraged him because he had nothing but time. He didn't have a lot of business. He had a lot of time. I was like, hey, before you hire me, go ahead and read these couple books. They're very cheap on Amazon and try it for yourself. And he ended up not hiring me, completely scaling and grow his business drastically just by giving it a shot. And I had another client who tried the same thing. It did not work. And so we found out that this would be a good fit. And so I was able to come in, and he already understood the way the world worked. So he could see the value in the different items. And so that's what I'm trying to encourage people to do is to, if you have the time, look into how this industry works and look into how this realm works so that when we work together, I'm not just using all these key terms and jargon and you're not
Yeah.
understanding and you're paying me X amount a month, but you don't know where it's going, you don't see any conversion. I want people to see the value in what our agency does, and I also want to see small businesses succeed. That's the goal, is we want to build up the small businesses, the nonprofits. I do a lot of church work as well. I want to see them grow. I want to see them reach people. I want to see them provide quality service and products without throwing thousands of dollars to some agency or some freelancer or some person where they don't actually see the value or get the value of that money. I want people to try before they hire someone, is what I'm trying to say.
That's excellent. That's excellent. Yeah, I think what I was thinking the same thing you were, is that you have to come into this thing somewhat educated
Mm-hmm.
about how it operates, what's behind the veil, so to speak, of it. Because if you don't, you could be easily taken advantage of, number one. And that's what
Yes.
I like about what you're saying, is that, you're going to help them to get educated if they're willing to do so, because a lot of people will take and just put their whole life into your hands, so to speak,
Yep.
about this. And you're like, this is scary for me, because, I have full control of what's going to happen here.
Uh-huh.
And I want you to, I try to educate you along the way, so at least you know what's happening, online,
Absolutely.
because it's a big wild world out there, right? So
Hmm.
I love that. I love that. That's a great approach. Can you mention the titles of the books that you recommended to your friend there?
Yeah, if you want to learn more about converting clients into actual customers, Alex Hermosi, he's written three books. One about leads, one about, I think, sales, and one about your actual pricing for your products. He has a plethora of resources. So I encourage that if you're working on what your product is and who your customer is. There's a few different books by, oh, the name is escaping me. Um, Neil Patel has a list on his website of the marketing books he recommends. And just about every one of those is pure gold when it comes to figuring out how that works. If you want to figure out how SEO works, I recommend watching Neil Patel's YouTube videos, and also the HubSpot course is a great way to lay foundations on the ins and outs. If you're wanting to learn about marketing, um, I encourage people to find someone in your niche. Let's say you're a plumber. Find a quote unquote influencer in the plumbing world and look what he does. Not what he says, but look what he's actually doing. How many times is he posting? What kind of content is he putting on his website? Use real life case studies, especially if you converted to a sale through that business.
Yes.
Think back, okay, what did they say in their emails? What did they do that convinced me to actually purchase this product, and reverse engineer that. Every industry is different. There's some things that are true across all industries, but every niche is different. So look at that niche and figure out what are people doing in that space, and then you copy, and then you adapt, and then you grow.
Excellent. So do R&D, as we say, rip
Yes.
off and duplicate, right?
Rip off and
Awesome.
duplicate. I love it.
That's the R&D department.
And
That's awesome.
keep it simple. Don't do
Yeah.
things too complex, especially if you don't know what you're doing.
I love it. I love it. Well, I'll tell you, Coleman, this has been fantastic. I've learned a lot. I've really gotten to know you better. I feel much more confident in referring you, my friend. And so I would love to give you the opportunity here to give our audience the information about how to reach you.
Sure.
What's the best way to get a hold of you? Because I'm sure there's going to be people wanting to engage you for service. What's the best way to reach you?
The best way is to reach us through our website, deliverdigital.net. It's the best way to look at our case studies, figure out what we're doing. Are we doing something that you want? Do we build websites in the way that you desire? Then fill out a contact form, and then typically our response time is within 24 hours.
Excellent. Excellent. All right, sir. Well, thanks again for appearing on the podcast. It's great to have you. See you next time.
Thanks for having me.